When viewed within the context of the rest of From Software's library of games, it can be easy to reduce plenty of Elden Ring's frameworks and ideas to the ones presented within games like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. Who can blame you for doing so when every previous entry has similar gameplay structures and mechanics that additionally reuse interchangeable terminology for those mechanics? Values like souls, blood, and runes for experience, and chosen undead, and tarnished for the main characters. Although Elden Ring might present a philosophy that shares many thematic elements with previous titles, such as decay and cyclical time, it remains distinct in its clear presentation of the eternally recurring nature of ambition and overcoming. Ruminating on From Software's narrative presentation of their titles, I've concluded that Elden Ring's world and story is presented to resemble mythology. This is in the sense that the logistics of the world and chronology are largely obscured and unimportant, while the aesthetic and themes take primacy in evoking certain feelings and statements about life. Keeping this in mind, this analysis will focus on the underlying ideas, themes, and concepts that drive the Lands Between, and will unfortunately omit plenty of interesting pieces of lore. Hopefully when you reach the end of my video, you'll also agree that Elden Ring is From Software's most conceptually deep and robust world.
Enough. I have endured more than enough.
Before I get into ranting about what I meant about the animus and the eternally recurring process of overcoming, it would be best to establish the known facts about the essential aspects and processes of Elden Ring's Lands Between to provide some clarity regarding the setting. The lore makes it clear that the Golden Order does not comprise the constitutive aspects of reality, and are actually the most recent in a long line of different orders and Elden Lords before it. Furthermore, the Erdtree itself is not some primeval entity, but rather one that was established by Marika as a sort of structuring of the wellspring of life known as the Crucible. While the current order and laws of the Gold only exist due to the Erdtree, there are fundamental forces of the universe that are beyond the Erdtree's control and predates its existence. The two known forces of the Lands Between that certainly predate the Erdtree are the ancient dragons and the force of life known as the Crucible. Now, not much is known about the ancient dragons, but we do know that they previously had an established order with Placidusax as the Elden Lord of the Age of the Dragons before the Golden Order, hinting that there might be a lot more to the history of the Lands Between that we are far too removed from to ever truly know. The Crucible is something that is explored far more in the Lands of Shadow, which depicts an entire civilization that venerates the raw and chaotic creations of life through the primordial and abstract Crucible. The Hornsent of the Shadowlands venerated the chaos of the Crucible through their social, architectural, and spiritual practices. They venerated what the Golden Order would call Omen, believing the extra features to be a blessing of the Crucible. And they created incantations and Elir Elim in spiral patterns to resemble the spiral image of the Crucible that they imagined. When she mantled the Gates of Divinity, Marika essentially created the Erdtree to create a new structure and order contrary to the rule of the Hornsent with the divine powers of the Greater Will and its vassal, the Elden Beast. In creating the Golden Order, Marika removed the Rune of Destined Death in an attempt to create a perfect everlasting order. With the structuring of the world through this new Golden Order came a new hierarchy whereby Marika declared the more chaotic beings of the Crucible, like the Omen and the Hornsent, to be ostracized from the grace of the Golden Order, as an inversion of that previous order. Marika would then go so far as to instigate a crusade against the Shadowlands as retribution for the wrongs committed against her and her people under the order of the Hornsent. Now it's time to get into the crazy family tree that Marika has. So, after ascending to godhood, Marika proceeded to give birth to a number of demigod children through a variety of curious circumstances. After about 2.5 years, Marika's paternity test results have come clear through schizo-sleuthing and the revelations of the Shadowlands. Marika has 10 direct demigod children total, and were likely conceived in around this order and methodology. Godwyn was the son of Godfrey and Marika. The shared G's between Godfrey and Godwyn indicate the parentage here. There were no flaws within Godwyn at all, and in fact he came to represent a lot of the best of the Golden Order, being called Godwyn the Golden himself before he was killed in the Night of Black Knives. Then, Marika, for reasons that will be explored in greater depth later on, cheats on Godfrey with herself and gives birth to Morgott and Mohg. Both are afflicted with a curse because of the incestuous nature of their parentage, and their names start with M to indicate their origins being from Marika and only Marika. Then likely sometime after, Marika continues the self-love and has Mesmer and Melina. Their timeline isn't so clear, but it is implied that Mesmer was an older brother to Radahn in Gaius' remembrance, which would indicate a birth sometime before the Rennala situation. Melina is never directly stated to be Marika's child, but it is implied in Mesmer's kindling item description, mentioning that his younger sister had a vision of flame as well, which is what she ends up doing when she kindles herself to light the Erd Tree of Flame. Both consequently have curses of flame because of their means of birth, like Mohg and Morgott. Marika's 2 confirmed daughters, Ranni nor Melania, had visions of flame, so that leaves Melina, who has a vision of flame, a minor Erd Tree incantation, and, as before, shares the M naming scheme showing that she only came from Marika. Radagon has 3 children with Rennala, Radahn, Rykard, and Ranni. All of them share the same R's of Radagon and Rennala, confirming their parentage, plus Radagon is Marika, also making them actually Marika's children. We'll get into that later too. Finally, the twins Melania and Miquella are born, both sharing M's, indicating their incestuous parentage between Marika and Radagon, and having curses because of that, making them clear descendants of this self-cest. We know that Marika began the Golden Order with Godfrey as her consort. As Ranni explains that any effective Empyrean requires a consort to see their will done throughout the lands between as Elden Lord. Godfrey fulfilled this role, serving as a force of destruction to all other groups that threatened the Golden Order, until all else was defeated and the gold faded from his eyes, revealing his lost grace. Upon fulfilling his purpose, Marika robbed Godfrey of his grace and divested him of his lordship, banishing him to the Badlands in the Long March of the Tarnished. Marika likely wanted to distance herself from the destructive reality of her Golden Order, but Marika could not rule without a consort. The rules of godhood still required that there be an Elden Lord beside her. This is where the strikingly red-haired Radagon comes into the picture. Radagon's origins are extremely unclear, and this is primarily due to his nature, in that he and Marika are literally 2 aspects of the same being. The statue of Radagon within Landel reveals the nature of Radagon and Marika's relationship in using the law of regression. The law of regression is the principle of the Golden Order fundamentalists that states that all things desire to be reduced into one, and is a law of simplification. In simplifying the seemingly distinct and separate individuals, the statue changes form into Marika, and the phrase Radagon is Marika is placed on the floor. This message is best interpreted in a very strict manner, and it should be read as a statement that Radagon is and always has essentially been Marika. There are clearer ways to suggest that an individual was incorporated into the goddess than the statement chosen, and other facts support this reading of their constitution as well. If Marika sought to become one with an individual Elden Lord to perpetuate her power, then why would she banish Godfrey instead of incorporating him into herself? Furthermore, why would all the children of Rennala and Radagon be powerful demigods, when neither of them prior to Radagon's ascension to Elden Lord held such divine blood? With all this in mind, it seems likely that Radagon was always an aspect of Marika when she tried to consolidate the separate powers of Elden Lord into herself by constituting a separate individual within her person. The best proof of this can be found within the Shadowlands, where we can clearly learn that Saint Trina is a split aspect of Miquella, who he had once casted away into the depths of the Cerulean coast. Both Marika and Miquella have another aspect of themselves that are manifested as the opposite gender, and I don't think that this is by coincidence. Within Jungian psychology, there is a concept of an animus and anima within every woman and man respectively. Within this Jungian framework, the psyche of men and women are inherently androgynous, and that people merely use the gender of the persona they present to the world. A man typically consciously presents masculine behaviors and thoughts, and vice versa. With this in mind, the animus is the masculine part of a woman's mind, and the anima is the feminine part of a man's mind. Finally, I can get to the point. Radagon is Marika's animus incarnated, and Saint Trina is Miquella's anima incarnated. Radagon was famed for his successes in war, and is obsessed with upholding the Golden Order. Saint Trina is referred to as Miquella's love at the Fisher Cross within the Cerulean Depths. Viewing Radagon and Saint Trina through the framework of animus and anima also clarifies why they have different wills from their primary forms. They are physical manifestations of latent unconscious aspects of their personalities that Marika and Miquella could not properly express or manifest themselves. Now, I already know that some of you who are more clued in on the lore will mention the fact that Radagon had performed acts that would not be considered masculine, such as making peace in the war against the Carian court and sewing clothes for his children. And I believe this and the mystery of Radagon leading to becoming the second Elden Lord are explainable through Radagon's icon. It reads, as the husband of Rennala of Caria, the red-haired Radagon studied sorcery, and as the husband of Queen Marika, he studied incantations. Thus did the hero aspire to be complete. Radagon sought to be complete in his studies and all other things. As Marika's animus, Radagon sought to be everything he could be, in the sense that he could be more than an animus incarnation of Marika, but a distinct person who could serve as Elden Lord and maintain a perfect golden order. This is an illusion that he and Marika must have had as a result of them believing in their infallibility after the seeming success of their golden order. But it was this hubris that led to the events that would ultimately destroy this very golden order. All of her and Radagon's children, being born of a self-obsessive incest between the two aspects of herself, are subsequently cursed. Morgott and Mohg are two omen twins that respond to their shunning by the Golden Order in very different ways. Mesmer and Melina both see visions of flame that Marika fears, Miquella and Melania being cursed with eternal childhood and rot. Finally, Radagon destroys Rennala by leaving her and likely motivates Ranni to break free of the control of the Fingers. Ranni undertakes the Night of the Black Knives by stealing Destined Death, using it to kill her body, resulting in the death of Prince Godwyn, the Golden Soul, causing Marika to effectively renounce the Golden Order in her grief by shattering the Elden Ring. The shattering of the Elden Ring exemplifies the paradox of Marika and Radagon's existence. Marika's hammer reveals that Marika shattered the Elden Ring with it, while Radagon tried tirelessly to repair it. At this point, Marika seems to want conflict to end the Golden Order, and Radagon seems to want to tirelessly defend it in a fundamentalist sense. In this way, Marika and Radagon seem to represent two different aspects of creativity, Marika being that which wishes to see an end to stagnant creation that she no longer believes in, and Radagon wishing to preserve his creation to the detriment of all else. This dichotomy continues to fall in line with the animus conceptualization of Marika and Radagon, as aforementioned. In line with an unhealthy manifestation of a Jungian animus, Radagon seeks to maintain absolute control over his perfection of the Golden Order, while Marika sees her attempt at creating a perfect world as an abject failure. This analysis continues to follow when applied to Radagon's red hair, which was commonly associated with military prowess within the lands between in the form of Radagon's Redmanes. While Radahn might have admired the legacy of his red hair, Radagon resented it. Radagon is said to have despised his hair because of its resemblance to the giants, those who tend to the forge that house the fires of destruction. Marika was unable to extinguish the flame of the giant's forge, which can represent a primordial force of destruction. As such, Radagon resents this hair, because it's a constant reminder of what he is and how the Golden Order came to be. He's a force of destruction that established the Golden Order and has to acknowledge the subsequent destruction that might await it. Marika's creation must end, just as it came to be, and Radagon despises this fact as her animus. This connection is further bolstered by the description of the flame sling that states fundamentalist prophets glimpse the flame of ruin within the faith, despite it being anathema to the Erd Tree. The flame of ruin could not be extinguished because destruction is a constitutive force of the universe that even a god cannot quell. This destructive fire is a curse that continues to plague Marika, with both her demigod children, Mesmer and Melina. Mesmer was born with a dark, ceaseless flame within himself that Marika feared, so much so that she secreted Mesmer away to the land of shadow. Mesmer's remembrance could mean that Marika was afraid of the serpent that dwelled within Mesmer, but having understood Marika's hatred for the flames of destruction, it makes more sense that she is afraid of the flame within him, rather than the serpent. Here's a bit of speculation from a brilliant Reddit post by Luxolcivi, linked below. It could be the case that Marika feared the fire within Mesmer so greatly that she would place the serpent within him, hoping that the serpent would consume the ceaseless fire that rested within him. And when this failed, wouldn't it make sense for her to send him away to the Shadowlands for shame of her failure to her son and her fear of his fire? This speculation isn't required for Mesmer's role in the story to make sense, but I felt it fit too well not to be included. Despite Marika essentially banishing Mesmer to the land of shadow, he continues to bear her burdens and to legitimately believe in his mother's golden order, wishing for his mother's enemies to direct thy maledictions, thine ire, and thy grief towards me alone. However, after being defeated by a tarnished bereft of light, led to him through his mother's grace, he realizes the lies and hypocrisies of the Golden Order, cursing his mother Marika.
Marika, a curse upon thee.
It's important not to forget about the Two Fingers, who play a game of telephone between their mother Metyr and, hypothetically, the Greater Will. The Greater Will represents order and non-specific stratification to the lands between. Although it is clear that the Greater Will has not been present for a long time, and that the guidance of the Fingers has been flawed for a long, unspecified period of time. As the Lord's Divine Fortification says, all had been broken long ago, including the Erd Tree and the Two Fingers. So while we don't know much about the Greater Will, we can be confident that the Two Fingers have lost their way, and that their guidance is and has been inconsistent with the Greater Will's desires for a while. However, a similar being with radically different goals, known as the Three Fingers, is a representative of the outer god of the frenzied flame. So the Two Fingers are essentially in line with creation and the structuring of the lands between, while the Three Fingers are in line with the absolute destruction of stratification and order. But the question remains as to what would motivate the followers of the frenzied flame to destroy all of existence. After finishing her questline, the Maiden of the Frenzied Flame, Hyetta, divines its will.
All that there is came from the one great. Then came fractures, and births, and souls. But the greater will made a mistake. Torment, despair, affliction, every sin, every curse, every one born of the mistake. And so, what was borrowed must be returned, melted all away with the yellow chaos flame, until all is one again.
This will is essentially a will to death that is resultant from the stratification and suffering that is latent within the order of the Greater Will. However, it seems that the Frenzied Flames wishes to go even further by seeking to destroy life itself in describing its desire to destroy everything to return to a point before fractures, births, and souls. The Frenzied Flame is an all-devouring force that seems to be a natural counterpart that exists as long as the Greater Will does, in that it exists as a form of resentment for the evils of the world caused by the Greater Will. In this way, the forces of the Greater Will and the Frenzied Flame represent two different wills towards life, one affirming it through order and stratification, the other seeking to chaotically remove it all as a form of resentment among the downtrodden. Finally, this brings us all the way down to our individual Tarnished. When starting the game, the core philosophy that drives Elden Ring is directly stated in the description of the aspect of grace, one of the first items you get in the game. The quote reads, "Follow the guidance of grace and become the Elden Lord. It's all a cycle." This is a pretty bold statement to be made when considering our character's agency in the lands between and the constitution of the world itself. This fact implies that any potential ending to the game is not entirely conclusive in a linear sensibility of time, but rather that our character is merely taking part in a natural cycle that underlies the structure of lordship and the world itself. It seems like the character's role in this cycle is consequently a personal cycle of self-overcoming, which is what I believe to be this game's primary theme. As this is a From Software analysis video, I would be remiss if I didn't interpret the philosophy of Elden Ring using a Nietzschean framework. The process of self-overcoming, as described in Nietzsche's book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, appears to be integral to the Tarnished journey, and fits very tightly within the world of Elden Ring. Within Thus Spoke Zarathustra, there is a chapter known as the Three Metamorphoses, whereby Nietzsche essentially describes the process of self-overcoming using three metaphors: a camel, a lion, and a child.
Many heavy things are there for the spirit, the strong load-bearing spirit in which reverence dwelleth. For the heavy and the heaviest longeth its strength. What is heavy? So asketh the load-bearing spirit. Then kneeleth it down like a camel, and wanteth to be well laden.
The camel within Nietzsche's framework is the individual that resolves themselves to undertake the hardest challenges available to them within the value system they believe in. In the case of the Tarnished, this is the calling of grace, guiding each Tarnished in ways unique to them within the lands between. The best example of this is the introductory cutscene, establishing this fractured and unstable period for the lands between, and it showcases how the Tarnished are essentially called to action during this tumultuous period by Marika. This scene not only sets the scene for the events of the game, but also subtly reveals the nature of grace and its varied permutations between individuals. We might initially be led to believe that grace calls all Tarnished to vie for the crown of Elden Lord, but the Tarnished individuals called upon in the intro all have different goals that aren't specifically oriented towards becoming Elden Lord. Only the first and last individuals listed, Horalu and the players Tarnished, are led to become Elden Lord, while the other four are led to achieve different functions in the lands between. Goldmask wants to revitalize the Golden Order through fundamentalist thought. Fia seeks to add the Rune of Death to the Elden Ring, allowing her to free her dead king Godwyn to live within death. Dung Eater wants to defile the whole world, and Gideon Ofnir wants to maintain the status quo of intelligibility. This places the players Tarnished among these chaotic actors to find the path they feel is most congruous with fulfilling their guidance of grace. Not all Tarnished are able to follow through on their personal trials of grace, and some fall into the blasphemous temptation of the Volcano Manor, and others lose all will to persevere. Either way, this stage sees the Tarnished discovering their way to become Elden Lord, and to build strength in working towards that end. It's after this that Nietzsche's individual and the Tarnished come to change by becoming lions.
But in the loneliest wilderness happeneth the second metamorphosis. Here the spirit becometh a lion. Freedom will it capture, and lordship in its own wilderness. Its last lord it here seeketh. Hostile will it be to him, and to its last god. For victory will it struggle with the great dragon. What is the great dragon, which the spirit is no longer inclined to call Lord and God? Thou shalt is the great dragon called. But the spirit of the lion saith, I will.
The lion, according to Nietzsche, is one who finds their strength in their personal trials, and attempts to follow a system of values. Ultimately, in finding this strength, they're allowed to criticize and tear away at that which they valued most. The Tarnished does this very act in their cardinal sin of burning away at the Erd Tree, and their subsequent unbinding of the Rune of Destined Death from Malekith. The Tarnished then returns to the capital, where they are stopped by Sir Gideon Ofnir, a Tarnished that can't bear to consider a world without Marika and her order.
I move in my bones. A tarnished cannot become a lord. Not even you. A man cannot kill a god.
Ofnir might claim that it's impossible for a Tarnished to become Elden Lord, Yet he stands against the Tarnished to stop them from achieving their goal. The Tarnished continues to defy Ofnir's expectations and marches on to achieve what is unthinkable to the All-Knowing. The Tarnished eventually challenges Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and defeats him, justifying their claim to the throne by means of their power.
Tarnished. Thy strength be sacred.
In this fight alone, the Tarnished directly proves themselves against the might and authority of the revered first Elden Lord, and is able to travel into the Erdtree to challenge that which structures all of the lands between itself, in the form of the Elden Beast. The Elden Beast itself is noted to be the pure embodiment of order itself, in its remembrance, and resembles a sort of cosmic dragon, showcasing some more similarities between the lion slaying of the dragon and the Tarnished respectively. It is after this ultimate work of the will that the ground is cleared for new creation, and this is where Nietzsche's third metamorphosis, the child, comes into effect. To create new values, that even the lion cannot yet accomplish. But to create itself freedom for new creating, that can the might of the lion do. To create itself freedom and give a holy nay even unto duty. For that, brethren, there is need for the lion. To assume the bride to new values, that is the most formidable assumption for a load-bearing and reverent spirit. Verily, unto such a spirit it is praying, and the work of a beast of prey. As its holiest, it once loved, thou shalt. Now it is forced to find illusion and arbitrariness even in the holiest things, that it may capture freedom from its love. The lion is needed for this capture. But tell me, my brethren, what the child can do, which even the lion could not do. Why hath the praying lion still to becometh a child? Innocence is the child, and forgetfulness, a new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a holy yea. Aye, for the game of creating, my brethren, there is needed a holy yea unto life. Its own will willeth now the spirit. His own world winneth the world's outcasts. The process of Nietzsche's self-overcoming ends with the lion becoming a child, to create on the cleared ideological field that it has created, after which the process will begin anew and happen in all eternal recurrence. All the endings of Elden Ring ultimately fulfill this process, but to varying extents. Most endings, where a new rune is incorporated into the Elden Ring, or the Elden Ring is merely repaired without adding anything, retain Marika as the goddess of the Golden Order, and somewhat changes the constitutive rules of the lands between. However, the Frenzied Flame and Ranni's endings provide far different results than the standard endings. The Frenzied Flame's ending is when the Tarnished completely submits to the madness of the Frenzied Flame's destructive will that seeks to end the cycle of all life, making all things one into nothingness. This ending is certainly the most different and changes the world the most radically because it is essentially an end to the overarching cycle that the lands between undergoes. However, this ending can generally be seen as the worst ending, assuming you're not omnicidal, because of the reality that no life can exist beyond the Frenzied Flame achieving its goals. Generally, Melina disappears from the story after acting as the kindling for the Erdtree, as her vision of fire was complete. But in the case of the Frenzied Lord ending, she is ready to actively oppose the mad and tarnished destruction. It clues us in more to Melina's motivations, in that she wanted to kindle a flame to end the stagnated order of Marika, but she by no means wished for an absolute destruction of life, and likely wished for a healthy rejuvenation of order, much like Ranni's ending. Now, there is another who can ironically fulfill the role of Nietzsche's child, if not for the Tarnished defeating this new god before he could begin his age of compassion in earnest. Miquella sought to mantle the gates of divinity, just as his mother Marika before him did, to defend those who were scorned and mistreated by the Golden Order. The Albinaurics, the Hornsent, and the curses of the demigods were all failings of the Golden Order that Miquella hoped to rectify in his age of compassion, Miquella ends up being styled as a potential Christ-like figure, one who values the weak and oppressed and seeks to uplift others through redemption despite their sins. However, Miquella's questionable methodology for achieving his goals marks him as a sort of false messiah, as he does not truly represent the supposed goals he espouses. Miquella charms people against their wills with the power of his rune, and manipulates demigods and common people to achieve his ultimate goal of compassion. He used Moog to get him to the lands of shadows, and used his body as a conduit for Radagon's lost soul. He charmed the various tarnished of the lands between to assist in his ascension to godhood, and he concocted a plan to finally receive Radagon as his promised consort, despite Radagon's evident lack of consent. Miquella was aware of the failings of his mother, and this led him to believe that his Empyrean blood was tainted, and he planned to divest himself of his Empyrean body, his plan being to overcome the sins of his mother. As Count Emir points out, Miquella saw things for what they were, and knew that his roots were rotten because of his mother and the fingers. However, the rotten roots that comprised Marika's reign were mired by a false understanding of the greater will, facilitated by improper communication through the fingers, who were only relaying the messages of their mother, Matir. There really is no evidence that can properly describe what the greater will desires or nature really is, and I won't pretend to know. However, I believe that Marika's belief in the Golden Order, being continually legitimized and supported by the greater will, was the Golden Order's fatal sin. The impositional belief in the righteousness of one order is something that will continue under Miquella, the key difference being that Miquella would invert the system of moral values by forcibly making all acquiesce to compassion through manipulation, rather than golden might. The gates of divinity are littered with the corpses of many, and Miquella was more than willing to step over them to become a god. Ringul off the Cerulean coast puts it best, remarking that Miquella shouldn't have casted away something important, that being his doubt, his vacillation, and ultimately, his love in the form of Saint Trina.
Miquella, stop.
Contrasting Miquella, Lunar Princess Ranni has profoundly different goals from the previous gods and Elden Lords of the lands between. She does not seek to ascend to godhood in the traditional methods of using her Empyrean flesh or ascending the gates of divinity. She wishes to rebel against the control of the two fingers and become a new god in a way that removes the overt power from the current order. She acknowledges the realities of order needing to exist as long as life exists, but believes that sending the order into the stars will make it a force that no longer dominates people's lives and constrains them within one way of being.
I thought I might expound a little further upon the order I envision. Mine will be an order not of gold, but the stars and moon of the chill night. I would keep them far from the earth beneath our feet. As it is now, life and souls and order are bound tightly together. But I would have them at a great remove, and have the certainties of sight, emotion, faith, and touch all become impossibilities, which is why I would abandon this soil with mine order.
The Erdtree and the Spiral of the Crucible stood tall as constant reminders of their age, but Ranni's symbol of her age will be so far removed that people can live lives beyond the oppression of that suffocating order. This ending most profoundly fulfills Nietzsche's process of self-overcoming, in that Ranni's ascension to godhood allows for people to have their own lives and beliefs that exist merely beyond the current order. People can choose the paths they walk during the height of this new age, like the tarnished do in a decrepit lands between, and can ultimately self-determinate without the constraints or interference of the two fingers. This marks the most radical change, with all the constitutive rules of the Golden Order being done away with in the form of an entirely new system of order that resembles the way the Golden Order overcame the Order of the Hornsent, and how this system of shifting orders likely stretches back all the way back to Placidusax's order of the Ancient Dragons and beyond. The lands between are rejuvenated, and Marika is released from her degenerative reign as the goddess of the lands between. Just as the child creates anew on the fertile land cleared by the lion, the Tarnished ends the game by setting a new standard where control is less overt and oppressive after clearing away the decrepit Golden Order. Ultimately, the personal journey of the Tarnished serves as a microcosm of the overarching conflict found within Queen Marika herself, and the unfortunate realities of becoming a god and maintaining order. In all of the game's endings, the Tarnished completes the cycle of life in the lands between, beginning a new rejuvenated age of opportunity. This process of self-overcoming requires the acquisition of strength, resolve, creativity, and all begins with the instigating
Flame of ambition.
If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. This video was a long time in the making, and I can only hope that this helped you appreciate the game's mythos as much as I have. If you really found this video insightful, please be sure to share it around, as I'd love to see the Elden Ring's community's thoughts on my analysis. And if you didn't, please share it around, because I'd like to talk about it, and it's fun to have discussions about why I'm wrong. This is a somewhat experimental and interpretive video, so feel free to discuss any thoughts or additions you might have in the comments below. Also, if you'd like to see more like this on Elden Ring, I'd be happy to make more videos if there's an audience, and if so, let me know if you're out there. One idea I might have is to analyze the Shadow of the Erdtree bosses as being Jungian shadows of many major figures and themes within the lands between. If that idea sounds interesting to you, let me know, and I'll start making it. Finally, if you're not subscribed already, please do, and thank you for all the support. Until next time.